kind of limits me to the paralleling stuff. So I'm probably just going to read straight from the Septuagint. I'll read the whole chapter first, and then we'll try to see if anyone catches any differences here. So, all right. So I'm going to mainly use my sword here, which is an Android app. All right. Shalom, everyone. I'm Brother Doug with the Awakened by Yahuwah Assembly. We're going to be getting into our regular Torah study that we do on Shabbats. We've been doing book by book readings, chapter by chapter readings. So you guys are just joining us for the first time. I recommend on the channel, I've made playlists of these readings. Chapter by chapter for Leviticus, a full playlist of all of our Leviticus readings. I really recommend you start from scratch with that to get some of the context of the reading for today. Same thing for Ayub, Job. So there's also a playlist for the chapter by chapter readings we've been doing of Job as well. So I recommend you guys that are just joining us for the first time, check out those playlists just to get some context, because we're almost at the end of Leviticus here. So anyway, so Leviticus 26, I will be reading from the standard Brenton's LXXE, which is Sir Lancelot Brenton's English translation of Septuagint. Anyone interested, I will be leaving links. I will be leaving a link to the PDF of Brenton's 1851 translation and other versions out there that are free PDF for you to test for yourself. So here we go. Leviticus 26. I am Yahuwah, your Eluah. You shall not make to yourselves mighty ones made with hands, graven or graven. Neither shall you rear up a pillar for yourselves, neither shall you set up a stone for an object in your land to worship it. I am Yahuwah your Elohim, or your Eluah. You shall keep my Sabbaths and reverence my set apart places. So talking about like tabernacles, temples, all that. I am Yahuwah. If you will walk in my ordinances, notice it says his ordinances, and keep my commandments and do them, then I will give you rain in its season, and the land shall produce its fruits, and the trees of the field shall yield their fruit. Your threshing time shall overtake the vintage, and your vintage shall overtake your seed time. And you shall eat bread to the full. You shall dwell safely upon your land, and war shall not go through your land. And I will give peace in your land, and you shall sleep, and none make you afraid. And I will destroy the evil beasts out of your land. What interesting it's called evil beasts. I wonder if that's really evil in the Greek. Let me just see something really quick. Seems a little weird. Just sometimes Brenton, he plays games and, thinks he knows certain words that he doesn't.
Mine says savage.
Yeah. No, I think the word there is not supposed to be evil. Ferocious. Yeah.
Yeah.
Poneros. The Greek word here is poneros, G4190. Hurtful. The effect of influence is essential character. Vicious is another synonym they're using for the definition. Culpable, grievous, harm, malicious. I think wicked or evil does not make sense in that context. So I'm going to go with vicious or ferocious. Okay. You shall pursue your enemies. They shall fall before you with slaughter. And 5 of you shall chase 100, and 100 of you shall chase tens of thousands, and your enemy shall fall before you by the sword. So really what's happening here, this is kind of like a warning of the barakas and the curses that we get here in this chapter before the book of Deuteronomy. So you can actually probably reference Deuteronomy 28, I would think, with this chapter as a parallel chapter in the book of Deuteronomy. And I will look upon you and increase you, multiply you, and establish my covenant with you. Okay. You shall eat that which is old and very old, and bring forth the old to make way for the new. And I will set my dwelling or tabernacle among you. So anyone that's got I just would appreciate if anyone's got noise in their background, please mute yourselves. just so it comes across clear to the viewers and listeners. Thank you. You shall eat that which is old and very old, and bring forth the new to make way for the new. And I will set my dwelling or tabernacle among you, and my soul shall not abhor you. And I will walk among you, be your Alua, and you shall be my people. So just one thing to note there, verse 11 shows that his love for us is conditional. He says, you do this, I will not hate you. So, of course, we're not taught that in the church, of course. So he is a conditional Alua, okay? And there's nothing wrong with that. He created everything. He has a right to be a conditional Alua. He doesn't have to be unconditional. So that's another lie we're told in the church, that if he has conditional love, somehow that's evil. No, it's not. I am Yahuwah, your Alua, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, where you were slaves, and I broke the band of your yoke and brought you forth openly. But if you will not hearken to me, nor obey these my ordinances, but disobey them, and your soul should loathe my right ruling, so that you should not keep all my commandments, so as to break my covenant, then will I do thus to you. I will even bring upon you perplexity and the itch and the fever that causes your eyes to waste away, and that consumes your life, and you shall sow your seeds in vain, and your enemies shall eat them. And I will set my face against you, and you shall fall before your enemies, and they that hate you shall pursue you, and you shall flee, and no one pursuing you. And if you still refuse to hearken to me, then will I chasten you yet more, even 7 times for your sins. And I will break down, stupid phone here, break down the haughtiness of your pride. I will make your heaven iron, your earth as it were brass. So basically, no rain for the crops, and they wouldn't be able to yield crops. So that's what he means by heaven iron and earth brass. Like basically nothing's going to yield for them. And your strength shall be in vain, and your land shall not yield its seed, and the tree of your field shall not yield its fruit. And if after this you should walk perversely and not be willing to obey me, I will further bring upon you 7 plagues according to your sins. I will send upon you the wild beasts of the land, and they shall devour you and shall consume your cattle. And I will make you few in number, and your ways shall be desolate. And hereupon you are not corrected, but walk perversely towards me, meaning, you don't repent and you keep walking contrary to my law. I also will walk with you with a perverse spirit. I also will smite you 7 times for your sins. And I will bring upon you a sword avenging the cause of covenant, and you shall flee for refuge to your cities. I will send out death against you, and you shall be delivered into the hands of your enemies. When I afflict you with famine of bread, then 10 women shall bake loaves in one oven, and they shall render your loaves by weight, and you shall eat and not be satisfied. Interesting. It's kind of interesting, since even modern day today, bread is not what it used to be. It's like, you need like 4 slices of bread just to be as full as if our bread wasn't full of additives and was real bread, 1 or 2 slices would fill you up for the amount that we have to eat 4 slices today. So I kind of find that funny. Not really funny, but kind of interesting. Then will I walk with you with a forward mind, and I will chasten you 7-fold according to your sins. And you shall eat the flesh of your sons, and the flesh of your daughters shall you eat. And I will render your pillars desolate, and will utterly destroy your wooden images made with hands. And I will lay your carcasses and carcasses of your idols, and my soul shall loathe you. And I will lay your cities waste. I will make your sanctuaries desolate. I will not smell the savor of your sacrifices. And I will lay your land desolate, and your enemies who dwell in it shall wonder at it. And I will scatter you among the Gentiles. Notice how it says among the nations, the Gentiles. So that's all nations. Okay. The sword shall come upon you and consume you, and your land shall be desolate, your city shall be desolate. Then the land shall enjoy its Sabbaths all the days of its desolation. I find it interesting because as I'm reading here, I can't help but see this picture of the captivity of Daniel's 70 years in Babylon, and that a lot of that was partially fulfilled. A lot of that. I mean, you literally have the days. He even says in the book of Daniel, we can go to that after, how literally it's a confirmed fulfillment, and how the land enjoyed its Sabbaths ever since they were in Babylon. The land of Israel, mind you, is the context. So the land was enjoying its Sabbaths when they were in Babylon. And you shall be in the land of your enemies. Then the land shall keep its Sabbaths, and the land shall enjoy its Sabbaths all the days of its desolation. It shall keep Sabbaths which it kept not among your Sabbaths when you dwelt in it. Again, that was partially fulfilled in Babylon.
Yeah.
To those who are left of you, I will bring bondage into their heart in the land of their enemies, and the sound of a shaken leaf shall chase them, and they shall flee as fleeing from war, and shall fall when no one pursues them. A brother shall disregard brother as in war when none pursues. He shall not be able to withstand your enemies. You shall perish among the Gentiles, and the land of your enemies shall devour you. And those who are left of you shall perish because of their sins, because of the sins of their fathers. In the land of their enemies shall they consume away. So, the sins of the father go down to the son, and so on and so forth. And they shall confess their sins and the sins of their fathers, that they have transgressed and neglected me, book of Daniel, okay, that they have walked perversely before me. And like literally in that prayer, right? What chapter is that in Daniel? Chapter 9? He literally says it in the prayer.
Yes.
Yeah. And I walk with them with a perverse mind, and I will destroy them in the land of their enemies. Then shall their uncircumcised heart be ashamed, and then shall they acquiesce of their sins. And I will remember the covenant of Jacob, and the covenant of Isaac, and the covenant of Abraham will I remember. Okay, here, verse 43. I will remember the land, and the land shall be left of them. Then the land shall enjoy her Sabbaths when it is deserted through them, and they accept punishment of their iniquities, because they neglected my right rulings, and in their soul loathed my ordinances. And yet not even thus, while they were in the land of their enemies, did I overlook them, nor did I hate them, so as to consume them, to break my covenant made with them. For I am Yahuwah, their Eluah. Now here's a perfect example of the concept of he shows mercy whom he wants to show mercy to, because earlier in this chapter, Yahuwah says, if you do these things, I won't hate you. So he's showing that it's righteous to have conditional love. But at the same time, he chose not to hate us. Okay. That's called mercy.
Yeah.
That's called undeserved favor. Okay. Because we deserve to be hated for our works of sin. And I will remember their former covenant when I brought them out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage before the nation, to be their Eluah. I am Yahuwah. These are my right rulings and my ordinances, and the law which Yahuwah gave between himself and the children of Yashrael in Mount Sinai by the hand of Moshe. So this is showing here that, contrary to popular belief, it wasn't just the 10 Commandments given at Mount Sinai, contrary to popular belief. So even these barakas and curses were given to them at
What else did you put in there?
Mount. So
I put garlic, hot water, manuka honey, lemon, and 2 slices of ginger.
Oh, no, you always give some warning before punishment.
No, but specifically what you're talking about, Mom, he did multiple times in the Torah. He said, I know you're going to depart from me. I know after Moses' death, you're going to do this, that, and the other. So Yahuwah warned them like 4 or 5 different times in the first 5 books alone of what they're going to do. And he's like, listen, you think you're so happy, or my bad, I don't like to use that word, but if you're so joyful and glad, but I know you're going to depart from me. And Masha even said, after my death, you guys are going to rebel. Same thing, Yahusha, son of Nun. After my death, you guys are going to go your own way. So they got multiple warnings. Go ahead, brother Yahusha.
He's talking about, he will repay you 7 times for your sins, bring upon you 7 plagues, smite you 7 times. Reminds me of Yahushua. He says, when a demon leaves, it brings back 7 worse than the first. That's what that reminded me of. Verse 41, I really don't like that it says destroy, in a lot of translations it says destroy in the Septuagint, where it says, and I walked with them with a perverse mind, or I walked with in opposition towards them, and I will destroy them in the land of their enemies. Destroy makes it seem like you're making an end of, but when you get to verse 44, you said, in the land of their enemies, I didn't overlook them, nor did I load them so as to consume them. So it clearly can't be destroy in that case.
Yeah, I think it's a translator issue, because I'm seeing in the AVP Plus it says strike. So it's not. Yeah, I would agree with you. It's not like they're being destroyed. Hold on a second. Let's see here. I think this is an issue where you got to look at the root word for this, because it says, let's see this. Yeah. Trying to see if there's anything I could take from the Strong's here to show that it's not destroy. I'm not seeing much. The context though is that he's like chastising them. So yeah, I would agree with you. It would be very weird for that to be destroyed. It would make way more sense that he's smiting them in a punishment sense, in a sense of flogging, in a sense of something like that would make a lot more sense. Or that they're not utterly destroyed, because it says right after that verse, it says, those of you that are left. So it's not as a whole they're destroyed. It's the individuals that are being wicked, that are being perverse. He does do that throughout prophecy. He'll leave a remnant that are actually obedient, but he will destroy a good number of Jacob's descendants when they're being wicked. So I think, I think the context would have to be that he's leaving a remnant still, even though he's punishing the majority of them, striking them. He's always leaving a remnant, because we see that in Jeremiah, we see that in Malachi. Where is it in Isaiah? It talks about if he did not leave a remnant, we would be utterly destroyed.
Oh yeah, I don't know where that is, but yeah, I remember that.
Oh, the reason I said 7 times 7, just for clarification from the chat there, I just found it interesting because he kept repeating himself 7 times, 7 times, and then if you sin it, then if you're still you still don't want to return, I'm gonna punish you 7 more times. So I was just putting 2 and 2 together. If you take those 2 together, you have 49, which is almost a jubilee. So I just find that interesting. And I know there's like traditions that supposedly on the jubilee you either have his judgment or favor. So I was just kind of trying to. I was just curious about it. That it seems like he has a set of 7s for punishment, and then another 7s if they don't return. Like the longer they go obstinate to him, he's going to punish them 7 more, 7 more, 7 more. And I just found it interesting because if you multiply 7 times 7 is 49. Just add 1 to get a jubilee. So I kind of found that funny. If Yahuwah was trying to hint to something there, I don't know. So, but I just found that interesting.
7 times 7 times.
Well, yeah, you have Daniel, the tribulation, not the tribulation, but the covenant is a 7-year covenant,
Right.
which halfway through it, it stopped, and then you have the 3.5-year tribulation. So yeah, sevens is used a lot, sometimes for judgment, sometimes for other purposes. But it seems like the reason he's punishing them for a set of sevens seems like it has to do with because that's how much they neglected his Sabbaths. That's how much they rebelled against him. So he's like giving them giving our spiritual ancestors their just punishment. And I'm not saying that it's like one time period. I want to just clarify myself. I'm not saying that those that claim to be of the tribe of Judah today that you guys that this doesn't refer to you. What I'm trying to say is that I don't believe it's one particular fulfillment in that chapter. I believe there's multiple fulfillments to prophecy. So I don't believe you can isolate a specific judgment and prophecy of this to one specific generation. And so that's all I was trying to hint around about Daniel and the fulfillment of Daniel, because literally he says it in his own book. He's praying, he's asking for forgiveness of their ancestors. They're literally saying that prayer. So literally what Yahuwah says in Leviticus 6 is at the minimum partially being fulfilled with Daniel's generation. So that's all I'm saying. So I don't want people assuming anything I'm not trying to insinuate that those that might be in this country from the tribe of Judah, that it doesn't refer to you. I'm not trying to insinuate that. So I don't want any misunderstandings of what I'm saying. Okay. Go ahead, Brother Yahusha.
And I'm not trying to get into numerology in any way, shape, or form. I still think it's interesting though, because I counted 3 sevens in that chapter. And like, never mind, I'm not even gonna say nothing. I just put it in the chat. Take from it what you will, but I'm not gonna say nothing on it.
Huh. That's interesting. I don't think that's numerology at all. So I think that was fine what you said in the chat. That's just like a general, idea that, our seasons have gone off, and it's true. We really don't know exactly what a full year was. We really don't know. As far as what the Bible is concerned, it doesn't tell us. So it's very possible that if you do 7 times 7 times 7, 3 times, you get 343, which could have been what the original calendar was for a full year. Very possible.
No, I meant like the full year with Hanuk would have been 350, if I'm not mistaken. That's what Hanuk points to before everything started to go astray.
Yeah. I mean, Hanuk is also a pre-flood book, so you also have that problem, and stuff changes after the flood, and so I forget if it's 350 or 364. I know one of the books says 364. I forget which book that might have been.
Yeah, you're right. It's probably not 350. I don't know where I got 350. Never mind.
Yeah, 364 is what Hanuk claims, but you got to understand that's a pre-flood. I always tell people like pre-flood book. The earth changed since the pre-flood era. So, well, regardless of your opinion on Enoch, I wouldn't be going by a pre-flood book trying to apply that today. We're in a post-flood world. I don't know. That's just my opinion on it. And other people that believe in Enoch actually agree with me. Certain other brothers and sisters out there that you shouldn't be trying to insert a pre-flood type of calendar in a post-flood world. So that's not going to really work. But anyway, I mean, there's a lot of things like a lot of issues with that, because you got the earth changed The atmosphere changed. The amount of oxygen in this Eretz changed. There's a lot of things that changed since the flood. So that I don't think it would be a good idea to do that. But anyway, I understand where the confusion comes, and people get the whole idea. We need to have 364 days in a year, and then they go to books like Jubilees and trying to plug stuff like that in. They get into a weird calendar, and I get it. I get it. I get the allure to that, because you're trying to go back to a pre-flood, age, but not understanding scientifically what happened after the flood. It changed this Eretz a lot. So that's just something to take into consideration. But anyway, let's see here. So I think where we're at, Mom, what, chapter 27?
27.
Yeah. Would you like to read for us?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay.
I just wanted to make two very quick points. One thing that I saw in my version, that I'm sure it's just an addition, but I found it an interesting addition. In verse 21, Douglas basically read exactly how it says, but at the end, mine says, as their sins deserve. So like he says, if you remain hostile toward me and refuse to listen to me, I will multiply your afflictions 7 times over, as your sins deserve. And that part wasn't in your version. But I found that interesting, that's all.
The NIV sometimes paraphrases and adds stuff in there.
I actually like that addition, because it kind of like, puts one more little punch.
Yeah, the
Into
NIV
it,
sometimes will do that to put emphasis.
Yeah. The other thing is that whole thing about the beasts, we've been talking a lot about that lately, and it's just, it's reaffirming that, yeah, we need protection from them.
Yeah, there
And
is a
this is
difference.
And
I really, not to cut you off, Mom, but I really think people should study into the difference between before the fall versus after the fall, with Adam losing his authority over this earth, and that does have an effect with the animals too.
Yeah.
So a lot of people point to Noah after the flood, but that, in my opinion, is a mistranslation.
Yeah.
And it's actually supposed to say you will overcome the earth, not that you will have dominion over it. Mankind was not given dominion over the earth after the flood.
No.
After the fall, there was no dominion over it anymore. That when you understand the story, and part of Yahusha's mission was to take back that legal authority that Adam lost to Satan.
That's right.
So what we have to understand is this world, even in an authority sense, was given into the hand of the devil in the garden.
Mm-hmm.
So that includes fear of animals fearing us, all of that.
Yeah.
That includes all that. So they're not. There's a reason that Yahuwah keeps saying, if I bring you into this land, these wild beasts are going to overcome you. If they're supposed to fear us, that shouldn't be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the biggest hole in that theory, that the animals should still fear us. According to what really happened in the garden with that authority, that I personally, I could be wrong, but I believe we lost that authority over animals being afraid of us. That was lost. That, yes, there's some animals that people will have good relationships with, but as far as fear or animals revering us, that doesn't really happen anymore. And even in the days of Moses, it didn't happen. They were constantly afraid of the animals. They were constantly, fearful of
David
the wild
them.
beasts of the field. So the idea that we still have dominion over them, I think there's lacking evidence for that. Based on a mistranslated verse in Genesis, 9 or something. So when you understand what happened legally with this earth, and how it was literally, the book of Job says, it was given into the hand of the wicked.
Yeah.
So what we have to understand is that's referring to Satan. So Yahusha, part of his mission wasn't just to die for our sins. We kind of limit it to that, but he defeated the devil to get back the authority of this earth.
Right.
And so that's part of his mission. That's kind of put to the side because of whatever biases we have from our church upbringing. But that's the reality, is that Yahusha also had to come get authority back from the devil. I mean, he even got authority back from Sheol. If you actually
Yeah,
look at some
yeah,
of the verses in
yeah.
Revelations, it says that, I was dead and now I have the keys of death and
That's
Sheol.
right, that's
He
right.
didn't have them before. So he defeated the devil, when he went to Sheol and took back the keys. So there's a lot about Yahushua's mission of his first coming that's kind of swept under the rug
Right, right.
for whatever church tradition reasons.
Mhm,
They don't want to focus on that for whatever reason. But
mhm.
I think, and I don't expect you guys to believe me. I'm just letting you know what I personally believe and I see scriptural support for. And so there was a legal authority problem around the time of Masha and that generation. And that's why, Yahuwah constantly saying, if I bring you in all at once, the wild beasts of the field are going to overtake you. If they're supposed to fear them, why would they overtake
Yeah, why
you?
would they overtake you? That's exactly
So,
right. Oh, yeah, definitely.
Again,
Oh,
so if we
definitely.
look at scripture by itself, something changed from the
Yeah.
garden to the flood and after the flood. Something changed. Once the post-flood generation came, you really didn't have animals fearing them. So that's my opinion. I could be wrong, but I have yet to see scriptural support that they still
Mhm.
fear us.
Right.
I have
Oh,
yet to see any
Mhm.
scriptural support for that. Other than, like I said,
Fear
that
me.
Genesis 9 verse that is mistranslated. If you look into the Greek, that word doesn't just mean dominion. There's multiple definitions for that word. It can either mean dominion or it can mean overcome. And if I'm not mistaken, that Greek word in the New Testament is also used in places where Yahuwah tells us to overcome. So it's not necessarily supposed to say have dominion over them. So, and even with that, that would be a weird, out of character, weird verse out of nowhere after the flood, already after the fall, that Adam already lost that authority. And to me, that just doesn't make any sense. So when you look at the context of what happened in the garden and after that, and even in Masha's generation,
Mhm.
way after, they don't have authority over the earth anymore. They don't. And they now have to be fearful of certain creatures they were not fearful of before. And so, that's just something I've looked into, I studied into myself. I'm just putting the possibility out there that we might misunderstand that, and we might be assuming something that's not really supported scripturally. So that's just, I'm just putting that out there. But from what I've seen, we lost that authority once Adam screwed up and ate of the fruit like his wife did.
Yeah.
That
was it.
authority went away. And Yahusha, part of his mission was to take that authority back. So anyway, so I just wanted to mention that. Trying to think what else here.
Just one comment. I think that's why I love this lion show so much, because the way this man is with these lions, they adore him. They hug him around the neck. These are big 500-pound alpha lions. And I just look at that as that's how it should be. This is an example, but the thing is, he's gained their trust. They know they don't need to fear him, and he doesn't need to fear them. And so that's why that kind of works. But it's nice to see, it's nice to see that, that is possible, but it's possible because he did a lot of work to gain that. But whatever, it's just, I guess I'm a little interested concerning the beast thing and all of that, but okay, so chapter 27, you want me to move on to?
Yeah, so I just want to explain something too, because I definitely someone posed a decent question or comment to me. So when I want to just expound a tad bit on the conditional love thing. Am I saying that Yahuwah didn't love you before he predestined you for salvation? I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is this idea that he loves us no matter what. We can keep living in sin, and he's still going to love us.
No.
That is a false doctrine.
It is.
That is, so what we have to understand is he has a certain type of love for those that he's predestined to be saved. That's a certain type of love. But as far as the love of you're now part of his children, you're now grafted in, you're his people, that specific love he does not love everyone with. He does not love the world with that type of love.
Right.
Okay, he loves, his love is conditional in the sense that, am I saying that you have to earn his love? No, that's not what I'm saying. And I think that's the confusion in Christianity. They associate conditional love with works. No. Conditional love means he can love who he wants. He is not in no way, shape, or form required to love everyone. He hates the wicked. Multiple times in scripture says he hates the wicked, he hates the heathen. Okay, he loves those who are his.
That's right.
And we see this in scripture. So, and I just don't want people getting afraid, like, because all of us fall, all of us mess up. That doesn't mean he's going to stop loving you. So I want to make a distinction there versus someone that really doesn't care to be saved, living as dirty and like a dog as possible spiritually. He's probably not going to love that person because that person doesn't care to be saved. That person at that moment, that person is sinning on purpose, doesn't care, is not listening to the good news, doesn't care. He's not going to love that person because they actually love their sin.
Yeah.
So this is what I'm trying to bring forth, like biblically, what type of love Yahuwah has for us. Yahuwah has an unconditional love as far as salvation goes. But there's also times even when he even despised his own people because they became apostate. And he even told Jeremiah, don't pray for those people. Don't do it. So what we have to understand is Yahuwah's love is conditional, depending on whether we truly love him is going to depend on whether he loves us back. So what I mean is, we're obedient because we love him. We genuinely love him. It's not like we're trying to earn anything. By doing that, he shows us that same type of love. But those that don't love him, those that don't care, he's not going to love those people. He's going to leave them in their sin, and he's not going to elect them for salvation. If they don't care, if they in their heart, the deep down in their heart, don't care that they're sinning, are actually fully wicked in their heart, he's not going to care. He's going to be like, all right, well, then,
Do yours.
you want to do whatever you want to do. You want to be your own God. So why should I love you? So that's what I mean by who has conditional love. That's what I mean, just to give a full context of that. I don't want people assuming I'm saying that he doesn't love you because you mess up. That's not what I'm saying. There's a difference between falling and missing the mark versus you just don't care and living in your sin, and you just don't care and you're just a wicked person. And you like someone that has zero morality, there's a huge difference.
Right.
So anyway, so that's what I was trying to explain. So anyway, so hopefully whoever needed to hear that, hopefully that helped out. Because I know it's a confusing, it's a confusing, sensitive topic. So anyway, go ahead, Mom. I'm sorry.
Okay, no, that's fine. Chapter 27. Yahuwah said to Moshe, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, if anyone makes a special vow to dedicate persons to Yahuwah by giving equivalent values, set the value of a male between the ages of 20 and 60 at 50 shekels of silver, according to the sanctuary shekel. And if it is a female, set her value at 30 shekels. If it is a person between the ages of 5 and 20, set the value of a male at 20 shekels and of a female at 10 shekels. If it is a person between 1 month and 5 years, set the value of a male at 5 shekels of silver and that of a female at 3 shekels of silver. If it is a person 60 years or old or more, set the value of a male at 15 shekels and of a female at 10 shekels. If anyone making the vow is too poor to pay the specified amount, he is to person to the priest, who will set the value for him according to what the man making the vow can afford. If what he vowed is an animal that is acceptable as an offering to Yahuwah, such an animal given to Yahuwah becomes set apart. He must not exchange it or substitute a good one for a bad one, or a bad one for a good one. If he should substitute one animal for another, both it and the substitute becomes set apart. If what he vowed is a ceremonially unclean animal, one that is not acceptable as an offering to Yahuwah, the animal must be presented to the priest, who will judge its quality as good or bad. Whatever value the priest then sets, that is what it will be. If the owner wishes to redeem the animal, he must add a fifth to its value. If a man dedicates his house as something set apart to Yahuwah, the priest will judge its quality as good or bad. Whatever value the priest then sets, so it will remain. If the man who dedicates his house redeems it, he must add a fifth to its value, and the house will again become his. Dedicates to Yahuwah part of his family land, its value is to be set according to the amount of seed required for it. 50 shekels of silver to a homer of barley seed. If he dedicates his field during the year of Jubilee, the value that has been set remains. But if he dedicates his field after the Jubilee, the priest will determine the value according to the number of years that remain until the next year of Jubilee, and its set value will be reduced. If the man who dedicates the field wishes to redeem it, he must add a fifth to its value, and the field will again become his. If, however, he does not redeem the field, or if he has sold it to someone else, it can never be redeemed. When the field is released in the Jubilee, it will become set apart. Like a field devoted to Yahuwah, it will become the property of the priests. If a man dedicates to Yahuwah a field he has bought, which is not part of his family land, the priest will determine its value up to the year of Jubilee, and the man must pay its value on that day as something set apart to Yahuwah. In the year of Jubilee, the field will revert to the person from whom he bought it, the one whose land it was. Every value is to be set according to the sanctuary shekel, 20 gerahs to the shekel. No one, however, may dedicate the firstborn of an animal, since the firstborn already belongs to Yahuwah. A cow or a sheep, it is Yahuwah's. If it is one of the unclean animals, he may buy it back at its set value, adding a fifth of the value to it. If he does not redeem it, it is to be sold at its set value. But nothing that a man owns and devotes to Yahuwah, whether man or animal or family land, may be sold or redeemed. Everything so devoted is most set apart to Yahuwah. No person devoted to destruction may be ransomed. He must be put to death. A tithe of everything from the land, whether grain from the soil or fruit from the trees, belongs to Yahuwah. It is set apart to Yahuwah. If a man redeems any of his tithe, he must add a fifth of the value to it. The entire tithe of the herd and flock, every 10th animal that passes under the shepherd's rod, will be set apart to Yahuwah. He must not pick out the good from the bad or make any substitution. If he does make a substitution, both the animal and its substitute become set apart and cannot be redeemed. These are the commands Yahuwah gave Moshe on Mount Sinai for the children of Israel.
And sometimes I know there's definitely those that might be questioning, okay, so shouldn't we redeem our firstborn? I'm going to tell you the biggest problem right now. If you look at that whole chapter and be honest with yourself, that law, the firstborn, and setting apart your firstborn, dedicating your firstborn to Yahuwah in context, whether it's the firstborn children that you have, firstborn male children, or your animals, it's all in a sacrificial system. There's no way to do that today. And I'll tell you why, because Yahuwah says, right, to redeem the firstborn. So your firstborn son is redeemed by a clean animal, the firstborn of a clean animal of your flock. Most of us are not farmers today, number one. Number two, we're not in a Levitical priesthood. There's no way to do that today. It's impossible. So I know there's people that will say, well, then, you're not fully keeping the law. We can't fully keep the law. I mean, we really got to start looking at our situation right now. We are in a physical type of Babylon right now. Okay. We're in captivity, number one. Number two, the law of the firstborn was tied to the Levitical priesthood. There's no way to keep that in a Melchizedek priesthood. Because, all right, you want to redeem your firstborn, right? To Yahuwah. Okay, where are you going to slaughter the firstborn animal as the substitution for your firstborn son? What altar are you going to put it on? What priest are you going to give it to? You can't. So that's the reality. And I think eventually our ministry is going to be doing a study about how what commands you can keep in a Melchizedek heavenly priesthood and what commandments you can't, because I think that's lacking in this movement, and I think there's a lot of confusion. And I always joke around, but to a certain truth, there are people out there that are confused that probably think it's okay to give Yahuwah offerings and act as our own priests in our backyard, and it's not.
No,
It's not. It's a sin. You're doing things your own way. So I'm not trying to attack anyone, but I'm being honest here, guys. We need to accept that there's certain commandments we cannot keep without a Levitical priesthood and without a temple. So I think it would be beneficial for our fellowship and other mishpachah out there to do a study about this, because I think this is one of the biggest confusing things. When you come out of the church, you're overzealous and I want to keep everything right now.
Yeah.
And there's no patience. It's I want to do everything right now. And, anyway, but I know we talked about this a bunch of times on the record, but I just kind of want to drive that point home that some of this stuff my mom just read about, we cannot keep in a Melchizedek priesthood context.
Well, Doug, and some of those things where the confusion lies where it says, keep this unto perpetuity. People just understand that to be, you're supposed to do this forever. So then when you say, so when you say, well, these things can no longer be applied today because we don't have such and such, that's where the confusion lies, because they're reading the scriptures and the scriptures say, keep this for all your generations. So how do we explain that to people?
Yeah, so the explanation though says those commandments were given in that priesthood forever. In the land. They were never given in Babylon to Daniel. They were never given in a context of another land. And if people didn't just read that one verse you just mentioned and read the whole chapter of every time these commandments are being mentioned, he's always talking about in your land, in your land, in the land, for a reason. Yahuwah gave those commands in the context of the land of Israel. He never gave those commandments, the firstborn, if you're in captivity. He never gave those commandments wherever you are. And when he does give a commandment where he wants us to keep it wherever we are, he usually says it. He usually expounds and says, by the way, in all your habitations, do this. He says it for the Sabbath. He says it for the Feast of Unleavened Bread with eating unleavened bread for 7 days. He says in all your habitations, the literal phrase. So what we got to understand is context. We can't take one verse of itself and build a whole new doctrine. You have to take the whole chapter. And I know it takes more work and it's very hard because then you got to read the whole chapter. And sometimes there's chapters that are like 50, 60 verses. I get it. It's difficult. But we have to do that to understand Abba's word. We have to do that. You can't just take one verse. Oh, it's forever. Because in prophecy, Yahuwah shows that the Levitical priesthood was not done away with. So what we have to understand is since these commandments were only given in that context of that priesthood, you can only do it forever in that priesthood. So if that priesthood's put aside, you can't do it. And Yahuwah knows that. And Yahuwah is not counting it as sin that we physically can't physically do these things the way they're supposed to be done. He would rather us not do them because at least we're not trying to do it in our own way. But if people just take that one verse and say, well, it's perpetuity, first of all, you're keeping the commandment outside of its context, number one. Number two, you're just doing things in your own way, and you're trying to come to him like Cain come to him. And that's really what's going on here. So what we need to understand is we need to learn from the error of Nadab and Abihu. We have to learn from the error of Cain, just giving him whatever. Okay, we can't be doing that. If there's certain things that are out of our control that cause us not to be able to keep his commandments the way he wants us to keep them, then we can't keep certain commandments. You know, I think it comes down to context. Are we reading stuff in context? I think a lot of us out there, we like to read one little verse and take this whole little verse and build a whole new doctrine around it. Just because he says perpetuity and forever doesn't mean you do it outside of the context of how that command is supposed to be kept. Yes, it's forever, but it's not forever in a separate priesthood. That commandment was never given in a separate priesthood. So that's what we need to understand as well, is that a lot of these commandments in the Levitical priesthood were only given in the Levitical priesthood. They were never given before the Levitical priesthood. They were never given after. And that's what we got to understand. When the covenant on Mount Sinai happened, there was laws given, multiple laws were given that were not originally in his law from the garden. So that's what we need to understand. There's a difference between, and I think there's another confusion in this walk, because people are trying to tell people that the law of Moses was in the garden. No, it wasn't. Okay. Sorry. No, it wasn't. Okay. There's a difference between the law at Sinai versus the law in the garden. Okay. They were not sacrificing whole burnt offerings in the Garden of Eden. Okay. They were not sacrificing peace offerings in the Garden of Eden. They were not redeeming their firstborn in the garden. Okay. A lot of these commandments came from Sinai, from after the golden calf. So that's what we need to understand, is that, and the Apostle Paul even says this, by the way, I'm not making this stuff up. The Apostle Paul even says, because of sin increased, the law increased. What law is he talking about? He's talking about the law of Moses. He's not talking about the law from the garden. He's talking about the law of Moses. Okay, so the law of Moses increased, more commandments, because sin increased. So in the garden, you had very few commandments. To be honest, when mankind was first created, right? We go to the book of Genesis. What was the first command? Don't eat of the tree of fruit of knowledge of good and evil. That's it. That was the first law. That's it. There was nothing else. Then sin came in, and then you had more commandments. And now you got to kill an animal because sin came in. Okay, but they were not doing all these different sacrifices in the Levitical priesthood in the Garden of Eden with Adam. That was not happening. So I think what confuses people too is the difference of covenants and the difference of, when these laws were given and what context these laws were given. A lot of—
Can you guys please mute your phones that are not speaking, because there's noise in the background.
Thank you, sis. I'm trying to control it, but it's very hard when I got like 20, 30 people on the chat here. So yeah, thank you. So basically that's what I'm trying to explain. So when people say to us, why don't we keep these certain commandments? We can always point them to the actual chapter those commandments are from and show them the context of those commandments. I'll give you another example. Tithes are not for today. Why? Because we don't have a Levitical priesthood. We don't have a temple. How are you going to give a tithe to the Levitical priest when there is no Levitical priest in this day and age? So what we have to understand is there's certain commandments that have parameters around them and are conditional commandments. Even though they're forever in a specific priesthood. So just to explain to people what I mean, you can't go off and give a tithe to Yahuwah of your grain and your animals when you have no sacrificial system. There's no way to do that. There's no way to do an offering for Shavuot when you have no priest to give it to. Okay, so that's what I mean. There's a difference between an earthly priesthood and a heavenly priesthood. Heavenly priesthoods don't have sacrifices. So, and Paul even says this, he says there was a change inside the law, inside the Torah, after Messiah died and resurrected, which means that whether it's permanent or not, I mean, I can, agree to disagree all day with a Christian that thinks it's permanent, but that's a whole nother ball game. But the point is there was a change in the law. There was a change of priesthood. And with a change of priesthood, there had to be change of law. Not that the law is done away with, but that the law, in essence,
Brother Doug, that's where the Christians would say, well, Yeshua done away with that. So that's why it's not applied today.
Yeah, I know where they get it from. It's Daniel 9:27. They don't understand who it's talking about in that verse. They misunderstand that. And it's very dangerous to think that's the interpretation, because then you're basically calling him the anti-Messiah. Because what people don't understand is what the context of that prophecy is actually that the anti-Messiah is going to bring back a so-called Levitical priesthood in the land, in the third temple. He's going to start the sacrifices, right?
All right.
And then he's going to stop them halfway through that 7-year covenant. That's who's being talked about in that verse. Yahusha never, ever, ever permanently stopped the sacrifices. And I see people even in this walk try to claim that in error. And they don't understand the difference of what Paul is talking about in Hebrews, what is it, Mom, 8, 9, and verses, versus Daniel 9:27, two completely different contexts. So Paul's talking about that there was a change of priesthood at some point, and all of us could speculate. Really doesn't matter when it happened, whether it was 70 AD, who cares? Point of the matter is it happened at some point. When the new covenant came, there was a change of priesthood. Whether it's temporarily, doesn't matter. There was a change. Certain commandments cannot be done in this current priesthood. So we have to understand that. And I'm sorry for going down this whole rabbit trail, but it's important to explain this to people, because we're reading about these commandments and people are saying, how can we keep these? How can we keep these in captivity? No, we can't. Okay. Daniel, even when there was a Levitical priesthood, did not redeem the firstborn. There's no mention in the book of Daniel of redeeming the firstborn in Babylon. If we're going to be honest with ourselves. Okay. There's no mention of him leaving back his crops, for the poor and the widow and the orphan in Babylon. Okay. He could not let the land rest.
So Doug, do we no longer circumcise the child at 8 days? Does that not apply to me?
Circumcision is different though, because circumcision is outside a sacrificial system. That command was actually given before the law of Moses. So that command we can even trace back pre-Sinai. Okay. So the number 2 is circumcision started before they were even in the land. So we can't even claim that it has to do with the land of Israel, right? When did Abraham get circumcised? He got circumcised in what land? It wasn't the land of Canaan. Okay, so there is a distinction. I'm glad you brought that up. There is a distinction. There are certain commands in the Torah that are universal. Doesn't matter where you are. Sabbath is one of them. Circumcision is one of them. Top 10 is one. The top 10. Okay. It doesn't matter where you are. You can respect your parents. Doesn't matter where you are. You don't worship idols. Do you see what I'm saying? So there are certain commands in the
Yeah.
Torah that are universal. They're like, I hate to use the word, but ecumenical. Doesn't matter where you are. You should be able to keep them. But then there's others that are tied to the Levitical priesthood that you can't keep. And that includes, that's why, to be honest, I'm just going to end with this. We can't even fully keep the feast, even though we desire to.
Yeah.
We are memorializing the feast. We're not fully guarding them or keeping them. There's no way to do that in a Melchizedek priesthood. The whole week of Passover had whole burnt offerings. How are you going to do that in a Melchizedek priesthood? So what we have to understand is there are certain things that are out of our control, and it's not sin that we can't do things the right way. Rather than trying to, what's the word I always use, improvise and try to say, well, we can keep everything. We just got to change a little bit of this. No, you change a little bit of something and you do it the wrong way. That's bringing strange fire. You try to change something and I'll be like, oh, we could spiritualize this and still keep it. No. That's playing with fire right now.
Yes.
That because you're playing fire with his mercy.
Yes.
Yahuwah is definitely going to give us mercy if we withhold from doing something in our own way.
Yes.
Obviously, he's going to give us mercy because we can't execute that command. It's out of our control. But if you start trying to keep it in your own way because you're zealous or eagerness to keep his Torah, even though you have the right mind or the right heart, you're still sinning because you're doing it in your way.
Yeah. That's
And it's not his way. It's his law, it's his ordinances, it's his feasts, not ours. So that's the one thing I just would, really encourage brothers and sisters to keep in mind is it's his law, not ours. Got to do it his way. So anyway, go ahead, Brother Yahusha.
So there's definitely certain offerings that you can't do, but there were definitely still offerings. So you can't do them, period, like without the priesthood. But to say that they were all done away with or they were all removed is clearly not the case, because you see Shaul performing offerings in the book of Acts. So you still see offerings being performed then. And if they were, just done away with, then,
Nah, I kind of wonder, I want to look more into it, but I think they still had a Levitical priesthood at that point. That was still way before the destruction of the temple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only reason.
Oh, which offerings were that? Which
They,
offerings were that?
the Nazarite vows, and Paul had to prove to the Pharisees that the story Brother Yahusha is referring to is when the Pharisees were basically it was being reported to the head council in Jerusalem. Oh, Paul is telling the Gentiles not to keep the Torah.
Yeah.
So Paul had to prove himself and basically pay for a Nazarite vow. So what I was referring to, though, sis, is that we really have no proof that the Levitical priesthood ended at that point or put to a side at that point. I personally believe it didn't end until the destruction of the temple happened, but that's my own opinion. So I believe they were still.
Brother Joshua mentioned that there were some sacrifices that were done.
There are offerings that have to be performed at the end of a Nazarene vow, or when you end your Nazarene vow.
Yeah.
Levitical offerings that have to be performed, and you have Shaul performing those offerings in the book of Acts.
Yeah. And that's another perfect example of what we can't do today, because we have no Levitical priesthood, we have no temple. So if someone gets defiled during their Nazarite vow, they're screwed if they try to keep it today. They're screwed. And this is a perfect example. I'm glad he brought it up, because if you try to keep a Nazarite vow today, even meaning well in your heart, what's going to happen if you touch a dead body during that vow? You have no way to be cleansed. And I don't think Yahuwah wants us doing them today. That's my personal opinion. That would fall under the line of dependent of the priesthood, that type of command. And there's no way you can do that outside of Levitical priesthood fully. you would be partially keeping it, which, Yahuwah doesn't say, try your best or partially keep my
No.
commands. He says, keep them the way I order them, even with the Passover, right? He says, what is his exact verbiage? I think all the ceremonies of it, all the ordinances of it. So to Brother Yahusha's point, in Paul's day, they were able to do that. And that obviously there was, even in Paul's day, there was still sacrifice. So there's no way it was done away with. But Paul does expound and say that at some point that in the new covenant, there was a replace of priesthood, even temporarily, you could say. There was a pausing of the Levitical priesthood. And I think what gets people confused, like Sister Marissa was talking about, is does that mean it's over? So that's why I think we need to do a future study on that, because it's crucial to understand that. And I think it would even be important to try to the best of our ability, find out when exactly the Levitical priesthood was put on pause or a transference of priesthood happened. Because I think it's important to understand that with the book of Acts, there's still like, what, Mom, 40 AD? 50 AD at best.
Yeah.
That's before the destruction of the temple. That's a good 20 years before the destruction of the temple. So
Paul was martyred before the temple even was destroyed.
So it's very possible that the Levitical priesthood was still fully in effect 100% at that time. And that's why they were able to do a Nazirite vow, to Brother Yahusha's point. That's what I personally believe. I could be wrong, but from what I've seen in scripture, there's no really pinpoint time that Paul said it would have been already transferred before the temple was destroyed. Because what we have to understand is Paul's letters, they span over about a 20-year gap, or like a 15-year gap. So like Hebrews, Mom, would have been what, like right before the temple got destroyed?
I would
like
imagine,
69 AD.
Yeah.
So, even if he's talking about present tense, that a new priesthood was put in, at the earliest you have that is like the later 60 something AD time period. That's why I believe that, in my personal opinion, because, you don't see Paul's the only one that talks about it, and he doesn't talk about it until he's almost 3/4 through his book of Hebrews. So at best, you're talking about between 65 and 69 AD is when the Levitical priesthood was put on pause. So that means the whole book of Acts, they had that Levitical priesthood still in effect in the land, mind you, with a temple. So go ahead, Brother Yahusha. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I don't remember being cut off, but I don't have.
I was just double checking.
I was thinking of something concerning the tithing when we were discussing it. And, my feeling is that, it's just an opinion, but, people might say to you, Christians might say to you, well, how does the church survive without tithing and stuff like that? You go back to the book of Acts and you look at the hearts of the people in that time period. They were giving their whole, that the gifts were incredible.
I think there's a important distinction, Mom. That's not a tithe. That's
a gift.
That's a gift. Even the law, the Torah itself, Mom, even with the Levitical priesthood, separates free will offerings from tithes. So it's important to make that distinction. I think that's another confusion we have when we first come into this walk. We equate helping a ministry as tithing. That's not tithing.
No.
Tithing is giving what you have, 10% of your income, to the priest, to the Levitical priest. That is a tithe. It's either 10% of what you have, or like your animals and your livestock, giving 1/10 of that to a Levitical priest. So what we have to understand is helping a shepherd out, giving of your free will cannot be called a tithe. It is not a tithe.
That's right.
We have to separate stuff. We have to make distinction. So you can't call it a tithe. It's not. So when the festival tithes are talked about, for example, going back to the feast, you can't keep that part of the feasts.
Yeah.
It talks about bringing your festival tithes to the temple, and that if you can't cart the animal, you have to sell it for money and bring the money to Jerusalem, buy the animal with your money and bring that into the temple. So you're still bringing an animal for sacrifice in the temple as a tithe. So you can't, there's no way to spiritualize that today.
Yeah.
there's no way to do that. So that's why I mention these things, because it's important to understand that,
Yeah.
because we have all this zealotness and desire, but it's kind of funny. Kind of Paul even talks about his own brothers like that. He's like, they got zealotness for Yahuwah, but not according to knowledge.
Yeah.
And we got to make sure we don't fall for that we're overzealous and we want to do everything right now. And we don't have a heart for Yahuwah according to knowledge, according to his word. Anyway, so that's just what Yahuwah reminded me of, is that even Paul's brothers, like Benjamites and Judeans, had that issue. When he was mentioning his own physical brethren. Go ahead, Brother Yahusha.
I was just gonna say, when it's time to get, I know it's off topic, but just so that I'm not caught off guard, remember, when we get off later on, or when we try go to get off, I need to talk to you. I need your wisdom and I just need to talk to you in private, man.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no problem. I got you, bro. No problem. Okay, yeah, but I'm glad you actually kind of brought us back on topic here. So
Sorry.
no, I'm glad Yahusha did that, because knowing me, I can go to 5-10 different directions. So no, that was a tube thing he did just now. So all right, so we just did Leviticus. Now we're gonna have to get back. We'll do a different recording, guys. I apologize for the whole side topic, but I do think it was important for us in this fellowship just to expound upon that, understand that in context. And for others out there might be baby believers out there. I know Sister Sadia has been telling me there's more and more Christians coming out of the church, coming into Torah. So hopefully you guys out there fully kind of understood what I was talking about in context. So hopefully you guys, that's a little meat for you guys to chew on. You might not be ready exactly for it yet, but I think it's important to understand that, about the priesthoods, differences of the priesthoods, and the fact that the Levitical priesthood was never fully done away. Yahusha never said he did that. Paul never said he did that. Prophecy says it's going to come back. Jeremiah says that if Yahuwah's covenant with them could be done away with, then his covenant of the sun as a light of day and moon and stars to rule the night would not be a covenant anymore. So it's definitely important to understand that. Yeah. So, all right. So we're going to take a little break, everyone, and we'll be back shortly with Ayub, the book of Job, chapter 15 to 16. So please stay tuned, everyone. Shabbat shalom, and we will be back.
Shalom.
Shalom.